yeah, we get that the tariffs are leverage, and we get that fentanyl is actually, we acknowledge, kind of an emergency, but we're going to act like we don't understand the connection. So no, this brings us to this conversation here. We are all references available, and we wanted to make sure that we have lawyers who work here, not only have Haitian Bill Richmond, but George the Greek, who said, we think we can really help serve you guys and give you some insight here, because the media is not going to, for the party that claims everything is nuanced and it's gray, they really don't give you any of the information that you need to understand it. But let me sort of set the table here. Not everything, and I mean this. And by the way, I was at fault on this front too, hanging around a lot of libertarians, and when I was at Fox News, and it's always Brookings Institute and Reason Magazine and all Manhattan Institute, they all kind of bleed together at a certain point. Not everything is just something that we discuss in the theoretical. And when we talk about the Constitution, the context does matter, that this was a people who had warred with the greatest superpower, arguably, the world had seen, certainly in recent centuries, to become the only superpower of the next century. And the Constitution was meant to preserve that. So if you think for a second that these founding fathers would have thought or supported the idea of local judges, of district judges who were not elected by the people of this country, determining national policy on everything from immigration, not just visas, but deportation, tariffs, dealing with the drug crisis, the fentanyl crisis at the border. You think that Thomas Jefferson would have said, "Oh, sure, some judge in Connecticut should determine what happens at our borders in a time of crisis." Then you need a CAT scan. And I tell you what, if we find ourselves in an actual war where it comes to your home front, God forbid that ever happens, if we find ourselves there, none of these kinds of games that we're playing now will enter into the equation. You've been separated from the necessity of our founding and Constitution by comfort for far too long. So I want to put that in context before we get into the ins and outs. We're at a point here where this country, it may be irreparably damaged. Do you understand that? Through decades of complete inaction. And in this case with judges, willful destruction. In other words, this did not happen overnight, the fentanyl crisis, the open borders. You don't get 20 million people in 4 years here illegally overnight. You don't get, we don't know the number, which also doesn't happen overnight, hundreds of thousands, millions of illegal aliens benefiting from social services here, from social safety nets, whether it's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. That doesn't happen overnight. And we can't continue down the path of inaction. And part of the reason for the executive branch is to be able to deal with these problems and break through it, especially in times of emergency. So do we want to wait for it to be an emergency where it can no longer be fixed, it's beyond repair? Or, and comment below, do you think that we are at a point in this country where the emergency is now, as far as immigration, as far as the subversion of Western civilization, as far as deals being made, not in the interests of the American people, even though our representatives have made them, but in the interests not of just foreign nations, but foreign adversaries who want to do you harm? Is the emergency now, or do we need to wait for it to become a war? In which case, I guess you have to call Code Pink. So Wednesday, 3-judge panel at the Court of International Trade. For those of you who haven't seen this yet today, they blocked President Trump's tariffs again. The president, the will of the people. These judges said, no.
We're following some very big breaking news tonight. News that will come as a big blow to Donald Trump and his agenda. Tonight, a 3-judge panel in New York has effectively blocked almost all of Trump's disastrous tariffs. Trump's tariffs against Mexico and Canada, his tariffs against the EU, against China, his tariffs against uninhabited islands with nothing but penguins and snow. They are all blocked by this federal court decision.
The court said his effort to justify them with broad claims of national emergencies exceeded his legal authority. Can you believe it? The ruling caused stock futures to jump. I'm going to say this to you twice. The Trump policy that was put in place got struck down by the courts. And what did the markets do? Jumped. They were excited about it.
The world will reset itself around the restoration of law and order in international trade and the crushing of the Trump tariffs and resultant personal, worldwide humiliation of Donald Trump.
So let me be really clear before we get to some key facts. You just heard it. Legacy media does the bidding of Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street was a load of crap then, and it is now. They're happy that Wall Street will willingly and gleefully put the needs of the American people and our manufacturing base and our employment base on the back burner in favor of short-term profits. They think that's a good thing. Because you can look at inflation right now. You can look at employment numbers. You can look at, by the way, what happened in Donald Trump's first term. The highest raise that working class Americans saw in their salary in modern American history. They would rather see Wall Street do a little bit better. And by the way, it was already on the way up. And then you just heard O'Donnell, who wants you to stop the hammering.
Jeez.
You heard him say, isn't this great, gleefully, that the rest of the world is mocking your elected leader, your president? There are no exceptions. They always celebrate the wins of people who want to destroy this country, like China.
Yeah.
To be clear.
Well, he even goes, he said something there that made me, it blew my mind. He said order is kind of returning or something along those lines, like the order of global trade. I'm like, you mean the order that's screwing us as a nation? You're happy that we're returning to that normal order that Donald Trump was trying to correct?
Right.
That's not just being against Trump. That's being against us. Like you don't want us to succeed.
By the way, a big part of the tariffs, too, was about China getting their ass in line with fentanyl.
Yes.
So I guess the order of record overdose deaths. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, O'Donnell. So let's go to the first key fact here. All references available in the description. Number one, the ruling, what their argument is. And Half Asian Bill, you can probably clarify this with people. It's that President Trump can't invoke emergency powers under the Emergency Powers Act to deal with things they claim like trade deficits or China's fentanyl issue, right? That's their standing?
Yeah, essentially what they're saying is that it's, even though it's specifically tailored to a particular concern that is backed by a lot of evidence. This isn't just anecdotes or talking about, hey, look, a few folks overdosed. The millions of issues that are coming out of this, people with overdose, the drugs, the border issues, they're saying those are not specific enough to be able to invoke the National Emergency Act and then use that as a basis under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to do these tariffs. I mean, it's one of the most ridiculous analyses, keeping in mind that the last time that the Court of International Trade even spoke on a presidential tariff was under H.W. Bush in the steel industry in 2002, and they didn't even make a ruling. So this isn't just, Trump is doing something that's a little bit unusual. Well, unusual circumstances require unusual solutions, but the courts even taking up of this issue is extremely unusual.
Yeah, and that would, again, seem like the weaponizing in many ways of the justice system. To give you an idea, this affects the Liberation Day tariffs, right? They were like 10 to 50%, it depends on the country. Apparently, they may be, I don't fully know this, the government may have to refund businesses that have already had to pay tariffs that have been collected. Now, there are some that are not affected. For example, the tariffs on cars, on steel, on aluminum, because that was imposed under a different law, the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. So some people are a little confused about that. That's why. So one is okay and one's not. And this brings us to key fact number two, who the judges actually are. So you have Gary S. Katzman, was appointed under Obama. You have Timothy M. Rife, who was appointed under Trump. And I know people say, look at Trump. Yeah, well, so was Amy Coney Barrett. Mm-hmm. And then you have Louis Anderson's long-lost twin sister, Jane A. Rustani. So, I'm a judge, you guys.
Man, that family.
Spot on.
Yeah. She's not even the weirdest looking district judge, though.
No?
No, I
Who's
made a
weirder?
list.
All right, we'll go back to the legal analysis, but I guess you have a list.
I have a list real quick of the weirdest looking district judges that I've seen.
Okay.
Well, at least last night.
Okay.
All right. Number 5 on my list is district judge and girl from the Ring, all grown up, Linda Lopez.
Oh. Okay, that one's pretty weird.
Yeah.
Number 4.
Brush your hair, lady. Number 4, Ninth Circuit judge who requests that both counsels approach the bench so she can inform them that she is in fact the one who farted. Ana de Alba.
It was me.
Yeah, we know, Your Honor.
All right. Okay.
Your flatulence.
All right. What's the next one?
Circuit Appeals Judge and human suppository John B. Owens.
That's exactly what it was in my head.
Yeah. No eyebrows for nice insertion.
Yes.
Well, smooth transition. Number two. Fourth Circuit Court Judge. Sorry, it's hard to read. Fourth Circuit Court Judge, who is totally not buying my story, Roger Gregory.
Yep. He looks like that's some bullshit.
That's some bullshit. I know it wasn't you. Okay.
I don't have time for this.
It's lunch.
Is lunch.
The court rests. And number one weirdest looking district judge, Court of Appeals judge, who reads every case up, down, left, and right all at the same time, and is also part-time sloth.
Oh, that makes
Eunice
sense.
Lee.
She is positively turpid. All right.
Nothing gets by her.
That's been Josh's list. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. That is the most white named black person I've ever seen in my life. Eunice?
Yeah.
They probably pronounce it Eunice.
Eunice. Come on, go there and call Eunice.
gotta be
What?
honest,
I got a cousin.
I know 2 Asian women named Eunice Lee. So
Really?
I literally,
Well,
when
that
the
makes
picture
sense 'cause
came up,
Lee-
I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is not what I expected. Not an Asian sloth. No.
Her son is you nephew.
No, but Asian sloth is my favorite strain of weed. Yeah.
That's what it turns you into.
All right, key fact number 3, and this is really important. You know, half Asian Bill Richmond will know this probably better than anyone here. What can the Trump administration do? Now, I know they've already filed an appeal.
And that's what they got to do. So the very first thing is the ruling from the Court of International Trade will take effect in 10 days is when the officials have to go and walk back everything that they need to do under that particular order. And so the appeal to the Federal Circuit Court, so that's the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, has already been filed, and the Federal Circuit can issue a stay. They can say, nope, Court of International Trade, your ruling incorrect, do not have to move forward with it. If the Federal Circuit decides to say, hey, the Court of International Trade was correct, keep going, then there can be an appeal up to the United States Supreme Court. So I would say we're going to see a busy next 14 days on this front.
And here, just so you know, there are other options, by the way, other tariff options that can be basically implemented via executive order under section, I have this here, 232. And as I understand it, this allows the president to levy tariffs on products that threaten national security. So, for example, that would be like the current steel and aluminum tariffs, Bill?
Yes. So the specific ones, this is that issue of like how narrow can it be? So this isn't an argument to say that the president can't give tariffs or initiate tariffs on specific products or specific industries. But what they're saying is you can't just do it broadly, because they're saying that fentanyl is not a broad enough problem, that illegal border crossings by our foreign enemies is not a big enough problem, which really just comes down to, are you guys not fucking paying attention?
Yeah, exactly. Like what's the number of deaths?
Yeah, like when you read the opinion, like the opinion doesn't actually get into the weeds of the justification. It just says, we don't believe it's actually a national emergency, so fuck off. Right?
Yeah, well, pretty
well, my neighborhood's fine.
Bill.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they do kind of say, well, it is an emergency, but we're still not really going to let you do it because, and I don't understand the rest, and I have a quote later on. But I also know that some can be implemented through Section 301. This allows, as I understand it, the president to levy tariffs on specific countries that impose unfair trade barriers, which sounds exactly like what he did. That's why I'm so confused.
A little bit.
So
they're called the reciprocal trade tariffs. I mean, they're literally like, if you're doing it to us, we're going to do it to you. And now apparently we're saying, well, you can't just unilaterally or globally respond to everyone.
Why?
What?
Yeah, why not?
So hold on, let me make sure I understand. Section 301, it allows the president to levy tariffs on specific countries that impose unfair trade barriers, but reciprocal tariffs, according to this court, don't apply?
So what they're saying is like, okay, so you remember the quote earlier, she was like, the lady on the news clip was like, oh, this snowy island that all they do is export like sea salt or something, right?
Yeah.
So there is a point to be made that some of these countries may have tariffs that are not actually impacting us in some kind of serious way because they're such small players.
Right.
But the reality is the vast majority of these, the reciprocal tariffs are designed to say, you've got some issue with us, we're going to go ahead and step up and start dealing with it across the board. But they're saying, no, you can't just decide to do it across the board. It doesn't make sense.
Well, we also have another possibility with Section 122, and this allows the president to levy a maximum 15% tariff to address the balance of payments crisis. So that only can last 150 days unless Congress extends it, right?
Correct. And so that's what Gerald is actually mentioning that earlier before the show. There's a way to be able to start moving these into place and give those options. In fact, in this particular circumstance, folks even were wondering before the challenge came out that the IEEPA national emergency tariffs that were struck down or kind of have to be walked back, why they weren't related to some of these other sections. So for example, under the Trade Expansion Act, you can literally have a national emergency declaration. There's some findings that have to be made by Congress, and then it becomes almost unattackable at that point, right? You can't use the courts to attack it except in a very narrow slice. And I think the issue is that Trump was moving forward based on what appeared to be everyone agreeing that this was a big issue.
Right.
And now everyone's coming back and going, no, I guess fentanyl's just not that big of a problem.
Right. Yeah. I remember that was the issue that everyone united around. And I was one of the few people who said, yeah, we need to separate fentanyl and opiates, because unfortunately people throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm like, we don't have an opiate crisis. We have an illegal opioid crisis, because this idea that Timmy got some Vicodin because he had a root canal and then was blowing hobos that he could get a pack of Percocet. It's just not true. It's just not true. And now people who need pain medication can't get it.
You can't even get a poppy seed bagel anymore.
No, you cannot.
It's ridiculous.
You can't. Not if
You can't if you blow a hobo.
That's true.
We all have our lines.
That's true. Well, that's just what he told you.
You get a little extra schmear if you
He doesn't actually have poppy seed bagels. There's also a way to do it through Section 338. And again, as I understand it, we have the links here. I think we have a link to Cornell. It allows the president to impose up to 50% tariffs on countries that specifically discriminate against the United States. But that's never been used before. And again, here's the thing. They say, oh, Donald Trump applied it too broadly. These sections and sort of areas where it'd be permissible also seem insanely broad to me, Bill.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that are brought in because they haven't actually been used. We're just going to have more and more challenges that go, well, this has never been limited before, so let's just go ahead and try to limit it. And then when you have activist judges who say, well, we're going to err on the side of doing anything that will limit Trump's agenda because we don't like Trump, then it becomes a problem, right?
Yeah.
The pressure there on these judges and them succumbing to it is a big problem. I mean, these are Article 3 courts. They need to maintain their independence and follow the law. But here they continue to err on the side of striking down without looking at the real evidence behind them.
Well, they pretty much have struck down everything.
Well, they're trying.
They're trying to strike down everything.
Literally everything
that President Trump has done.
They even tried striking down his lunch order last week.
They have tariffs? Okay.
Yeah.
Then they've done visas. Okay. They've done the deportation orders in some cases. So what can be done? This is the thing. You're basically saying there is no power. Didn't we have some of the biggest spending ever take place under Barack Obama? Didn't you have George W. Bush effectively declare war without Congress at one point in time? Remember, that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And now you can't say, hey, a reciprocal tariff until you fix the fentanyl epidemic. Tell me the courts have been politicized without telling me the courts have been politicized.
Right. Well, one of my problems too, and Bill, you and I were talking about this earlier, is that the people that brought these cases, they know what I'm about to say about what Goldman said about this. Goldman issued a statement after this ruling and said, basically, this is a nothing burger in that the tariffs can be put on in other ways and the administration will move to do that. So the tariffs won't really go anywhere. It's not a nothing burger in that the courts are now overstepping their bounds yet again, and that's what we're really talking about. But that just goes to show you the people that are bringing these suits, they know that is likely what's going to happen. And so it's not really even about affecting the tariff policy of this administration. It's about making Donald Trump look bad and weak.
Right.
And who does that help?
China.
Exactly. Our foreign adversaries. China's all too happy that this is happening right now, by the way.
Right.
They love it. They want this to happen. So, Bill, what you just said something a minute ago that I just basically I wrote down a little bit of a note. Part of it is a cuss word, and I can't say that, but
That's
I
okay.
read it, and it's fine. The courts can say this and issue a stay. Screw it. I don't care. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. I'll wait on their decision. Until then, everything stays exactly as it is. Come get me, bro.
Well, they've got 10 days. At the very least, they've got 10 days.
No, it's not even 10 days. I'm saying I don't care what happens in 10 days. Screw whatever order they come out with. Screw whatever. I'm doing literally nothing. If I'm
you're
this
President
administration, I'm doing nothing right now. Nothing changes. I'd go out and be like, hey, that's really interesting. It's really cute that you guys had this decision. Doesn't make any sense. So we're going to appeal it. We're gonna ask for a stay. We're gonna go all the way to the Supreme Court. And until that decision comes down, I'm not doing anything different than what I'm doing now. China, you're still screwed.
You mean kind of like Joe Biden did with rent forgiveness and student loan forgiveness?
Yes.
Yeah. What are the consequences if he does that? I mean, I know it's different for Trump than Biden.
Yeah, so this is always the issue when you look at the judicial system and you say, okay, what will these courts do? They don't really have their own police force. So at that point, you start getting into this fraying of the entire system, right? So a question of like, okay, if the branches no longer listen to the other branches in areas where they're making rulings, who's going to step in and do something about it? It could be something like declaring that these officials who are not complying are no longer in power. They no longer have the authority. But again, it requires like the whole department to decide we're not going to listen to this official who a court has now removed for having not done it. Or you start moving over into the judicial side of enforcement where the Justice Department starts arresting officials for failing to comply with court orders. You start throwing them in jail, things like that. So, I mean, this could escalate pretty crazy.
No, so hold on.
Seems unlikely, though.
Yeah, they're not going to do that because this is the only president who they have tried to jail and someone attempted to assassinate, and that backfired.
It'll make him
I
way
can't
more
imagine
popular.
they want to send in.
Yeah. Send in your guys. By the way, let me just clarify. I'm not saying that you're ignoring the courts. I'm saying that you're waiting for this to go through the process. And so you're going to sidestep the game that these guys are playing.
Right.
So we'll get to some of the solutions down here, but because there are obvious solutions,
I'm a
because
fan
this
of the game.
administration can
I'd
go
sidestep
different
common.
ways with tariffs, the game is basically let's just slow him down long enough to where he's ineffective as president of the United States. And so he looks weak, and it helps our enemies and people around the world that are competing with us, that maybe aren't our enemies, but want to compete with us economically. I just think he says, fine, I'm just going to ignore all this until it gets to the Supreme Court. And then we'll see. We'll have a fight there.
Macro point here. You now know why it is almost exclusively Republicans and conservatives who wear the American flag pin. You guys get it?
Yeah.
They're celebrating empowering China, just like they did MS-13. Do you guys get it? I get it. And Affation Bill is a very accomplished lawyer. He's going to understand the details, the granularity on this far better. But I think you all know enough to see that they are cheerleading for people who want to take what you've built. And I don't just mean you, the American people as a country, what you have built personally. If it's a business, if it's some sense of community, maybe it's a rehab center, by the way, to deal with people who have been struggling with this drug crisis. Everything that they are advocating for and they are cheering is adversarial to the good of the American people. And I think it's important to keep that in focus because then you'll understand the behavioral pattern. Wait, why is the media, why is the Democrat Party, and why are all of these district courts, these judges, why are they all acting the same, following lockstep? There has to be a commonality. Well, then you look to other commonalities. Oh, championing China. And that's not a stretch, by the way. Oh, making sure that foreign Chinese nationals can stay on our campuses. Oh, making sure, by the way, that we don't necessarily have voter ID. And the reason that all ties back, because you had a Chinese national who voted in Michigan. It was confirmed his vote still counted anyway. You guys remember that shit?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. Oh, advocating on behalf of a nation who has, by their own admission, been seeking the destruction of Western civilization and harming you in this country any which way they can. And they all follow lockstep. When they say, hey, look, Donald Trump's in the White House, sure. Look at all of the other institutions. Higher learning, you've seen what's happened with Harvard and Brown. You look at the courts, you've seen them overstep their bounds. You look at what's happening, of course, in the legacy media. Look at just Jake Tapper, what he's going through right now. Still not apologizing for lying. How do they all line up on one side all the time? Oh, and who else is there? Oh, that's right. China and criminal gangs who want to exploit our open borders policy. They're all in one huddle. It's them versus you. Let's go to the next key fact here. And this is important. What can be done? Well, really, this should go to Congress. And you know, you would think, hey, Republicans have quite a bit of control at this point in time. They could retroactively ratify President Trump's tariffs or pass a tariff law. But you have some people there who may not. So this, and I have this written down here to make sure that I remember correctly, and Bill, you can clarify, they can amend the Emergency Economic Powers Act or expand Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act to include issues specifically like trade deficits or the Chinese fentanyl crisis. And here's the thing. I know they can do that. Congress would need to do it, but it already seems like it's in these sections. That's where it seems disheartening. You're like, yeah, but that kind of seems there, though.
That's the biggest rebuttal to this entire thing, is that Congress has already taken the actions to delegate the authority of tariffs in large areas to the executive branch, and specifically to the president. So really, again, we're not arguing about can the president impose tariffs or not. It's how many tariffs and how far can those go, which makes the complete striking down of the specific tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs, the ones related to fentanyl and the border, a huge problem, because it's essentially saying, we know you're allowed to do some stuff, but we're just going to throw it all out right now and then let you figure it out, right? So that political motivation to say, we're just going to hamper you across the board is a big problem. And to get to your point earlier, Stephen, I think it's really interesting when you think about the lack of values that are applied when attacking these policies, because the side, like you said, of Occupy Wall Street is now using the evidence of the stock market going up and capitalists winning as evidence that this was a good policy or a good result. It's like, wait a minute, whose side? You're not even on your own side anymore. And that's where you can find some hypocrisy that underlies this entire attack on what it should be and is a stance to protect America.
If Donald Trump existed in the 1800s and implemented these kinds of tariffs and policies to protect the American worker and our manufacturing sector, Bernie Sanders would praise him as a folk hero. You guys understand that? What do you think Bernie's... Just take away the name Donald Trump. And this man, he stood up to Wall Street. He said, I don't care about Wall Street, the fat cat profits. I'm going to focus on employment, and I'm going to focus on economic growth and inflation, manufacturing for the working class. Now he's on the side of Wall Street. It's horseshit. Anyone who tells you that Occupy Wall Street was always horseshit. These people are never consistent in their values, ever. Let's go on to what their claims are, though. Let's steel man this here for a second as far as how they justify it. Here's one of their claims, is that the trade deficit doesn't actually constitute unusual or any kind of extraordinary threat.
The law does not grant tariff authority to the president simply when he finds or determines that an unusual and extraordinary threat exists. I sense a little snark there. I appreciate it. But man, when you put it that way, it all kind of makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Now, for the first time, we have a federal court saying that we all kind of sort of knew to be true already. The president's justification for this trade war is BS.
Okay, so here's the truth. The threat is not extraordinary. It's not an emergency for people like Jen Psaki. Okay? It is for a lot of people in this country, where you had judges sit by while this country just got caved in many ways, particularly our industries. This nation right now, you don't think this is an emergency? We're completely dependent. You remember COVID? On supply chains from our biggest adversaries who want to do us harm. Things like critical minerals, pharmaceuticals. Remember shortages during COVID of that? Electronics, chipsets. And then if we want to right this ship, we can't, by the way, just up production right away because of some other red tape. We also can't build our own stuff here anymore. So ships, any kind of fabricated metal, all kinds of military goods. Think about this for a second. If you had an asteroid hit the United States' ability to extract, to use, to refine, process, to basically create what we need as far as rare earth minerals, as far as chipsets, as far as our ability to build ships, as far as our ability to build and assemble a lot of military goods. So in a world where an asteroid just hits those targets, where we can't do it anymore, do you realize it would have no discernible difference because we can't do it now? It all has to come from China. It all has to come from overseas. We're not talking about tchotchkes that you put in a party favor bag. We're talking about during COVID. Do you guys remember this? During COVID. Now, this was as bad as it gets for you, and it turned a lot of you conservative. During COVID, it was cheaper to get a new car than a used car in many ways. Do you remember that? Because of the interest rates? Do you remember how there was a shortage? Do you remember how you weren't? It's the first time where I may invoke a lemon law, and half Asian Bill knows this because I've had to have the only time in my life I purchased a new car because it was the only full-size SUV available in the region. And you have twins and a 120-pound dog? You need one. The transmission has been switched out like 3-4 times because they didn't have the chipsets. You all went through that. Do you guys remember needing certain drugs, antibiotics during COVID, not being able to get it? That's the closest you've had to an emergency. Do you know how much worse it would get in a time of war? where it's not just because they have supply issues overseas as well, it's that they deliberately turn it off. But don't worry, I bet China would never do that because they're looking out for you. I bet they would never use the leverage they have against us.
Let me say one quick thing on that, and I think I'm uniquely situated. My Chinese family members who are 100% Chinese. They're not even like me, half Asian. They are 100% Chinese. They have been sounding the alarm for decades, saying that if you don't recognize that China wants to dominate and control the planet, then you are not listening.
Right.
And I think that's the fundamental disagreement here is they're going, oh, you're just being racist by targeting these other countries of people that look different. No, we're not doing it based on the way they look. We're doing it based on what they say and do. The lack of intellectual property protections, the ability to send shitty goods, if not actual bad drugs, over into this country.
Yeah.
The precursors for fentanyl being able to flow not only directly into the United States, but onto the North American continent that makes its way into the United States. China could be doing more. They have one of the most aggressive and complete police states that have ever existed. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. I have no idea how these drugs and the chemicals are getting in, and why do we sound like we're from Jersey?
I don't know.
Bill has a bad Asian accent. No, but that's what the Chinese are saying who are here in America. They're like, hey, we know a little thing about those guys because we fled that fucking country.
Yes.
And the rest of white liberal America is looking around going, no. I think you're just being racist.
Well, put it this way. Yes, during COVID, and we all are. But during COVID, we were in a tailspin. China was also in a tailspin, largely because they were lying, by the way.
Yeah, to the rest of the
But
world.
let's just say this. We were all in a tailspin, okay? And you saw the supply chain issues. You saw what happened. Now, change it. Change, we're in a tailspin, and China's not because they planned it. So take what you went through with toilet paper and apply it to everything you use. But it's not an emergency.
No.
Let's go on to the next claim. And this is one that they kind of make, but it doesn't. They say, well, fentanyl is kind of an emergency, but it doesn't really matter. I have this from the ruling. They say the state plaintiffs do not argue that the fentanyl trafficking orders fail to invoke unusual and extraordinary threats. That's them saying, like, we're not arguing that it's not an emergency. But then they go on to say a dam deals with flooding by holding back a river, but there is no such association between the act of imposing a tariff and the, quote, unusual and extraordinary threats, for example, that of the fentanyl trafficking orders purport to combat. What they're basically saying is, yeah, we get that the tariffs are leverage, and we get that fentanyl is actually, we acknowledge, kind of an emergency, but we're going to act like we don't understand the connection. So no.
So what
it's
is
not specific enough is basically their argument. Like,
I gotta tell you, I agree though. I think that what the court is saying here is we need to build 100,000 A-10 warthogs and have them patrol the borders.
Yes.
And just shoot every fentanyl carrying boat that comes near the border.
Yeah.
I actually agree with that. I'm into A-10 warthogs.
Okay. All right. Well,
They're
also,
beautiful. They sound beautiful.
But short of that, yes, it's ridiculous. It's saying, well, we have this one really important lever that China would not like if we used, so we push the button, and now we're like, no, it's not directly connected.
Yeah.
like, come on.
Well, here's
I
the
don't
thing.
understand the metaphor.
If
The
you don't-
metaphor is that if you build a dam, you stop the river, but they're just saying, well, just let the river flow.
Yeah.
Don't even try to build a dam or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Whatever you're doing, just stop. Kill the beaver.
I'm gonna be reductive here because I'm good at that. You have a choice. Pull the economic levers now or pull the lever of the war machine later. That's your choice.
There you go.
It's a binary choice. There is no choice number 3. Pull the tariff lever now, make it sting enough that they get in line, or pull the war lever in 2, 5, 10 years. That's where this goes. Let me give you one last truth, because we just talked about them saying that, fentanyl's an emergency, but you can't use this. Congress already did give the president the power to declare an emergency.
Yes.
And if the president is exceeding the emergency authority that has been granted by Congress, then Congress should be the one to check him, not some shitty court.
Right.
Bill?
Yeah, that's exactly the point of it. And there's actually specific provisions about how Congress can go through and do an expedited process to say there is or is not an emergency, right? And again, when you look at this opinion, they simply kind of just gloss over and say, well, you can't just declare an emergency without getting to the core of the question, is there an emergency, right? And when you look at the evidence of where the authority was, if you go back to prior to January 20th and the prior administration and the claims that they were making and the actions that were based on really not the border, because they keep saying the border was just never a problem, right? But that fentanyl was a problem, and they're like, well, it's less of a problem now, or what you're doing now isn't going to affect. It's like saying, well, my kid's out doing cocaine in middle school, and I'm going to ground him. Well, you're not stopping the cocaine from getting in his nose. Well, I'm stopping him from being in a place where he's going to get it.
Right.
And in the same way, we're hitting them in the pocketbook where that will help to say, you got to do what you need to do. There's otherwise, just like I think the other question was, or the other point that you made, Gerald and Stephen, is what's next? War machine.
Well, I will say this. I agree with everything you just said, except you failed to take into account the old closet cocaine goblin.
That's
what I had.
That cocaine goblin.
Hunter
Just opens the door. Want to get high?
I thought he was in the Oval Office. Is that not where it was?
I don't know what my closet monsters.
Yeah, rich white people have a very different.
Hey, Steven, you trying to get some sleep? Dream of big asses. All right.
Yeah, there's a goblin in my closet. Just do the coke and leave me alone. I'm trying to bang your mother.
Is he trying to sell you shitty artwork?
Well, and here's the thing. You know who's most excited about this ruling? To be clear, China.
Yep.
So here's a quote here. This was written in the Global Times. It says, it has aroused many opposing voices within the U.S. China urges the U.S. to face up to the rational voices of the international community and all domestic parties and completely abolish the wrong practice of unilaterally imposing tariffs. Because I'm sure that China's tariffs were done through a democratic process.
Or their trade barriers or their stealing of IP. Like, come on. This is like Russia during the Cold War saying, hey, you got to leave us alone. Like, this is a great place. So, everybody's loving it. We don't believe you.
Yeah.
We're not going to change to your system because you say so. We see your actions, China. Everybody sees it very clearly. Just keep your foot on the gas, Trump.
Well, here's the thing, too. I will say what you do have to balance is because I get it. People say, well, if you do this, it'll be wielded against you. And I understand that with packing the court. I get that. But you have to, at some point, go, okay, what are the results? Where do we find ourselves? What's the end game here? Where do we want to find ourselves? As opposed to where we are now. And does the action infringe on individual civil liberties? In this case, okay, what is the result? We have a fentanyl crisis. What is the result? We have unbelievable trade deficits. What is the result? We've crippled our manufacturing sector. We've basically created 100% dependence on foreign adversaries for a whole list of goods and services and raw materials. Okay? We don't want to do that. Something needs to be done. We're going down this path. It's not working. Okay. Is President Trump using these Emergency Powers Act to impose retaliatory tariffs? Or, for example, to close the border, or to revoke visas for temporary student residents? Does that in any way infringe upon the civil liberties of an American citizen? If no, then in my opinion, it's permissible and it's not an overreach at this point, because something needs to be done. And I know that you have something to do, Half Asian Bill. You have a hard out. So tell people again where your show is and where people can watch.
So you can find us on Rumble and YouTube, Hardly Legal, and we're releasing episodes, and especially a new set of episodes we shot at the Comedy Store in LA. So those will be coming out over the next couple of weeks. I do want to make one quick reference to China, though. This reminds me, like listening to these quotes from China reminds me of the time during the George Floyd riots where they were like, tisk, 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 United States, your human rights record is terrible.
Yeah.
And we're like, Nike factories. Tibet. Yeah. What's wrong? What you guys are lecturing us?
Yeah.
There's Uyghurs in them hills.
It's insane.
Hills have Uyghurs.
Yeah, they're like, no. You violate human rights. That's right. If you own shop, I don't care if you're Muslim, you have to sell porn and alcohol. Like they literally force you. You don't even have the right, if you're a shopkeeper, to say, well, I won't sell tobacco, or I won't sell pornography or alcohol. They say, no, this is China. You can sell alcohol. Not porn, but alcohol and cigarettes. I don't know if they sell porn. They say they don't have porn, but I'm pretty sure they do. All right.
Just cartoons. Bad. All right, thanks,
Half
guys.
Asian Bill, thank you, sir. This has been Half Asian Lawyer Bill Richmond.
Oh, sort of.
There we go. Oh, look.
Wow.
Nice little skip there.
Nice
think-
little plie.
Is that a plie or a pirouette?
I don't know.
He sashayed across here like the
you
good
go.
little chink sprite he is. Now,
I'm a man. I called it a skip.
these judges suck, to be clear. If I was murky about that.
Yes.
I'm not a fan. And neither is President Trump. He went head to head with the most notorious of them just this morning.
Wrong. Okay, Dredd, you've got 30 seconds.
Mr. President, I've been looking over this tariff court case and,
Don't even start with me, Dredd.
What?
Don't even start. Tariffs are totally within the control of the executive branch, and there's nothing you can do about it, pony boy.
Whoa, I was just gonna say you're right, and these judges are totally out of line.
You're out of line, Dredd.
Hey, I'm trying to go be your friend here.
Pony boy, I don't need pony boy friends. I have great friends already, the best friends. People say all the time, Mr. President, frankly, you have the best friends.
But
I don't need pony boys.
Yeah, but these judges have betrayed the law.
I know. Can you believe it? All this work, all the people putting in for hours on end just to come up with this ridiculous block.
Don't blame yourself, Donald. They made the mistake, not you.
No, wrong. I don't make mistakes. I never do. Don't worry about it. We all know who's at fault here. It's not me.
Well, I'll be the judge of that.
You'll be the judge of nothing, Dredd, pony boy.
I knew you'd say that.
What is this? First you say you're on my side, now you're threatening me. Who do you think you are?
I'm a street judge, and I'm very late for
You're a
work.
street rat. That's what you are. People say he's a street rat. Like Aladdin, only instead of a magic carpet, you have a gay motorcycle.
No, my wife doesn't think it's gay.
Oh, she does, Dredd. She told me while I was on top of
You take that back.
I won't take it back. She says nothing but the fact that you're gay.
I'm not a gay cuck. I am the law.
No, Dredd, I'm the law.
No, I am the law.
I am the law.
No.
Wrong.
Oh, today's a disaster. All right.
Why?
You didn't like that?
No, I did. I did. I just mean, it's weird. So, just everything today is weird.
Nick's going to the suicide forest after this. He'll be back.
No. That's okay. That's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's okay. So, look, let me leave you with this. I let us off with this. Not everything, and I think this is really important because you are governed by people who see everything as an intellectual exercise. And you can look at people, for example, like Marcus Aurelius, who's seen as one of the great Stoic sort of philosophers. He hated philosophers. That's one of the great ironies. A lot of early philosophers hated philosophers. They thought that they were useless.
Yes.
Because at a certain point, it becomes intellectual masturbation. And these are the people, by the way, you have to ask yourself, a judge, let's just take a district judge, a circuit court judge. What has their life been like to get there? Okay, well, they go to, ideally, in almost all cases, an Ivy League school. Okay, they go to law school. All right, they clerk. They usually have an internship at some kind of a think tank. Sometimes it's a lobbying group, especially if they want to go into D.C., so they have to bridge that gap between working with a private law firm and getting their feet wet in the swamp. And they work their way through some kind of a local court as a judge, and then they have to effectively campaign and bump elbows with the right people and go to the right cocktail party and hang out at the right think tank so that they get that spot, and God willing, they're appointed. And you look at Congress, and you look at our Senate, that's a lot of those people as well. You look at the people who run the FBI, who run the DOJ, who run the CIA, and you look at a lot of the people, by the way, who are talking heads in media. Just take Brian Stelter, for example. He's a guy who went to school, ran basically a Perez Hilton blog on the gossip of Washington, D.C., and I don't know what dirt he has on people, but for some reason, someone bought him some caps and decided that he could have his own show. And these are the people telling you the kinds of decisions that should be made for the country. And so you go, well, I don't have toilet paper. Don't worry, this is how we should handle this. Well, hold on a second. My son hasn't gone to school in 2 years, and he's doing this remote, and they're still, no, trust the authorities. Well, hold on a second. I don't go to Harvard, and, I make $100,000 a year, and Indianapolis working on HVACs, but no, trust us, we know that we need student debt forgiveness, student loan forgiveness. Well, I mean, I'm a landlord. I'm an actual home provider here, and I have people who aren't paying rent, and I still am on the hook for the payments that I have to. No, trust us. We need forgiveness for this right now. We need forgiveness for the renters, but not for you. It's people who sit around and they say, yes, let's ponder that. At a certain point, you do have to look at the intersect of where we are, which is their policies, the direction that we have been on, the course we've been on, and the results that we are experiencing right now. And certainly we experienced for the last 4 years. Think about this. You had plenty of experts who told you that we had the most secure border of all time. Remember that?
Yeah.
20 million. Unprecedented. We had experts say, well, you can't just deport people. Really? Want to bet? We had experts say there wouldn't be any difference. You can't do anything about the border. Record lows of all time. That's what we're seeing as far as apprehensions. Not everything is an intellectual exercise. And at some point, you need someone. And yep, they'll use the term strongman as though it's a bad thing. I don't think so. Just so you know, Stalin, Hitler, Mao, Pol Pot, all the communists, all the socialists, those aren't the only strongmen who've existed throughout history. You have George Washington. You have people like Jefferson. You have people like I just discussed, Marcus Aurelius. You have plenty of people who have been strongmen and wielded it for good. And you need those people, otherwise the bad strongmen win. So I'm okay with what people call strongman tactics if it is acknowledging a problem and saying, you know what, this isn't just something that exists out there in the ether. People are dying from these drugs. And here's the thing. I used to be a libertarian, and I still think if someone does drugs, okay, well, that's on them. People make bad decisions. But you also have to understand it's by design. We have a porous system that exists to protect our citizens from what is effectively being used as a bioweapon. And China is using it by design. We have gang members and cartels using the open borders by design. 27% of Harvard students, their enrollees, are foreign nationals. And we know what that means with China. It's by design. This is not something that is nebulous or something theoretical. It's something that you're experiencing. Toilet paper shortage, that's real. Not being able to get a car that functions between the years 2020 and 2023, that's real. Skyrocketing inflation and you struggling to get by, that's real. We can't allow people who do nothing, who create nothing, who generally contribute nothing, to dictate the policy and direction of this country, which inevitably comes to the conclusion every time of do nothing. It's time to do something. And here's the thing. If you wonder whether doing something is constitutional or not, well, if you can't say it any better, I'll quote Thomas Jefferson. As for the safety of society, we commit honest maniacs to bedlam. So judges should be withdrawn from their bench whose erroneous biases are leading us to dissolution. It may indeed injure them in fame or in fortune, but it saves the republic, which is the first and supreme law.
Perfect.
Hey, do you like what you saw? I don't know how because it's on YouTube and we have to cut all the good parts out. So you should tune in live weekdays at 11 a.m. Eastern on Rumble, where we can still speak freely and even use words like and get and
so.
Whoa. You've been here this whole time?
Yeah. Snuck in.